Okay, so start by placing the bottom portion of the toggle into the bottom toggle keeper, then set your brakes and put the top toggle portion into the top toggle keeper. The control line should be inboard and the brake to toggle excess should be outboard. Stow the brake to toggle excess in the elastic keeper on the outboard side of each of the rear risers, making sure that the top of the toggle excess does not go past the top of the elastic keeper. It should be right at the top. So another little trick that you can do here is you can take your toggles, because you're going to put a weight on it anyway. Take your toggles and just bend them forward and just put your weight on them right now, and that'll put a little memory in them, so when you flick them in, they're sitting nice and flush. Okay, and then we're going to place the canopy into flat fold. And then placing the canopy in long fold. Do your reduction folds, 45 your stabilizer, and flake your tail. Do the same exact thing on the other side. Okay, so what we have here is a very separated parachute. So you saw me when at the very beginning I brought my hand all the way up and got all the nose. I could see carpet straight down in here, right? You want that. You want all that parachute stacked there, and you want all that parachute stacked there. So it's the only thing you have in the middle is the center cell. That's all you want. You want nothing else in there. So here is that important bit there, right? If you don't see carpet here, you have done something wrong, okay? We've already started by getting it symmetrical here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start pulling the fabric so that I continue that division of the canopy left and right. So what I'm doing is I'm going inside and I'm grabbing and I'm pulling. I'm going to do the same on the other side so that I end up with nothing in the middle, just two symmetrical halves of the thing. Alright, next is our first S-fold. The first S-fold should be approximately the width of the distance between the grommet in the center of the free bag to the mouth of the free bag. Make your first S-fold. Keep the grommets about midway back through the S-fold. That way they're nice and seated when you put it into the free bag. and then place both sets of grommets just offset of center. Alright, so we're going to dig right down at the back of the fold here, okay? So we're going to take our fingers and we're going to accordion fold right up this seam. But as I do that, I'm digging towards the floor, so I'm digging down as I'm doing that accordion fold. And what that's doing is it's forcing all that other material to the sides and out of the way. Take that center cell all the way up to the nose. And there's my center cell here. I'm just going to take both left and right over the rib and pull back and hold it with my knees. So that's going to hold the center cell nose to keep these two ears. Allow me to use both my hands to make my ears. Go ahead and cocoon your left and right ears, making nice, long, flat ears. Your way, and you do the same on the other side. Cleaner and the flatter you make the ear, the better. You want to make it like a thick piece of linguine versus a piece of spaghetti. This one's a small parachute, so it has a little bit of ears at the top, which is good. You don't want this to be really bulky. You don't want a whole bunch in the ears, okay? Our rig in particular is thick, meaning from the back pad to the top when it's laying on the back. So you got to raise this portion up, otherwise you have a hard time filling out the container. And then place the reserve parachute into the free bag. Once you've got the canopy 90% into the free bag, you can go ahead and flip around and dress it up and get it nice and completely into the free bag. We shouldn't see big portions of canopy sticking out of the free bag. Make your locking stows. Your locking stows can be as long as 3.5 to 4 inches. You want to make them so that they match the width of the bag. Now, little tips and tricks. Packing paddle. You can really use the packing paddle now to get the canopy into the two separated halves. Just be careful. You can also use the packing paddle to work all that material to the outsides of the free bag, and that'll help when we have that valley. It's pre-positioning that valley for us. So, the more you do that, the more you get this material to the outside corners, the easier it'll be to get that last reserve top flap closed. You want to have basically nothing in the middle here. That way that reserve top flap closes nice and flat. If you've got all kinds of bulk in the middle here, you're gonna fight it. Go ahead and do your line stows in the line stow pouch. leaving about 6 to 10 inches of excess. Clean up your line stows in the pocket. So before we get it in the container, it's a good idea to make it look like the container before you put it in there. So you want to make the wedge look like a wedge, not a pillow. This is a little trick you can do too. You take your side flap and you just roll it over. And what it'll do is it'll give you if you go over twice, it'll give you something to hold on to and grab when you go to put it in versus stressing out the sewn joints. The ace lanyard, you want it to route to the inboard. You don't want it to go that way. You want it inboard, so when you bring your reserve risers over top, they're routed properly. A little tip and trick here is to get the harness to lay flat. You want to try and get the reserve container flat on the ground, which means you have to pull the harness, the over the shoulder portions, up so that you can get it to lay flat. Otherwise what happens is you're curling it this way, and which reduces the volume, and then you're fighting it and you don't need to. Alright, go ahead and take the free bag, rotate it over, dress your reserve risers and place them into the bottom of the reserve container. So another little trick here is if you route your closing loop or your pull-up cord through the grommet, and then line the grommet up with the grommet on the floor plate. You should see the cutter right here. Okay, you should be able to see the cutter lined up with the free bag grommet. Then you can hold that in place with your knee and then put the bag into the container. So those little grips that I gave you earlier, make it so you can plop that sucker right in. Action paddle. The better you make this a flat surface versus a bulging surface, the better you're off. Now we're going to stow the ace lanyard, the air snare, into the air snare pocket. So it's the orange lanyard goes into the orange pocket on the free bag. You're going to fold the air snare approximately 1/3 and insert the fold into the orange pocket, like so. Next, you're going to fold that pocket and the top portion of the free bag under the packed free bag so that the bridle is flat and routed out the top. Place your air snare to the right of the bridle. Now we're going to stow our bridle. Approximately 4 folds of the bridle on the wearer's right side, all the way up to the ace modification. Next, you can take that stack of bridle folds and bring it slightly outboard, just so you can get the grommet on the side flap past it. When you close that side flap and pin it, you'll bring all that bridle fold over towards the center of the pack job again. Temp pin the right side flap. Now we're going to install and connect the ace air snare to the ace modification on the free bag. First, you take the Dyneema line, straighten it out, and route it down through the grommet. Next, you'll take the loop and go through the ring on the air snare and then back up through the grommet. Insert the pin through the loop in the Dyneema line, then place the pin inside the red pocket. The pin should seat all the way down, and then insert the green tab, which then closes over the red window to make a green for go. Next, grab yourself a crochet hook and go behind the white polypro and grab the excess Dyneema line and simply pull that slack up so that the ring and the grommet touch. And you're stowing that excess simply under that pocket. Now place the connected ace modification on the wearer's left side of the reserve free bag and route the bridle out the bottom right corner of the container. Go ahead and close the wearer's left side flap directly over top of the ace modification. And close the wearer's left side flap. You can use a packing paddle to keep the free bag from buckling over. Just be careful that you don't disturb the ace modification while doing that. At this point, let's start putting the ears of that free bag all the way to the outside. And then we're going to finish routing the remaining portion of the bridle up to the reserve pilot chute. So we have 45 coming out this direction. Place the folds of the bridle underneath the bottom of each left and right side flap. And then take the sewn portion of the bridle and route it upwards towards the grommet. The binding tape roll-off should be placed purposefully at 6 and 12 o'clock. The binding tape roll-off should be at 6 o'clock so that you have enough room between the springs to allow the pilot chute material to be stowed. Wrap all the fabric around from the pilot chute, wrap it towards the main container while you compress the spring, keeping all the F111 up between the cap and the first coil of the spring. Once you have it compressed, go ahead and make your half twist and place the twisted portion of the pilot chute into that valley, that void in the free bag that we created earlier. Alright, so you'll notice that half twist falls right in that valley, okay? And that's going to prevent it from coming out this way. The reason we do the half twist is because you're pulling that direction on that one, you're pulling that direction on that one, which keeps it tucked in here for the duration of the pack job. Go ahead and make some ears and then bring the reserve bottom flap over top of the pilot chute fabric and close the reserve bottom flap. Once you have the pin, the temporary pin in the bottom flap, go ahead and shape the container at this point. It'll relieve some of the pressure on the side flaps. Again, making those sides flat, not round. Push the ears of the free bag as far to the outboard side as you can get them and push them down into the container. You want to have very little fabric coming out of the top of the reserve container. Try and make the reserve top flap as flat as you possibly can as you're closing it. Should be able to get my grommets to, I should be able to see the grommet underneath without using a tension tool here. If you can't do that, then you got way too much under here. Go and finish dressing the reserve pilot chute. Take the excess fabric and place it underneath the reserve bottom flap with a packing paddle, a wooden packing paddle, or your fingers. All of that excess should easily fit into that valley that you made underneath the reserve bottom flap in the free bag. There it is.